Lucky, really I ain't got a pain. There's a time I always feel happy as a king. When the red, red robin comes bobbing along, there'll be no more sobbing when he starts throbbing his own sweet song. Wake up, you sleepyheads, get up, get out of bed, cheer up, the sun is red.
Hello and welcome to the very first Red Robin Podcast Weekly of 2023. The Red Robin Podcast is powered by Budget Tyres, Autocentre and 𝓡𝓸𝓫𝓷𝓼 Chartered Accountants. And this is the only independent Hull Kingston Rovers podcast around. This week I'm delighted to be joined by a podcast debutant and lifelong Rovers supporter. Steve Till joins us as we toast our Betfred Super League Round 1 victory over the Wigan Warriors. We'll also bring you the latest squad news and look forward to our trip across the M62 with Salford fan Paul Parkin joining us to get a Red Devils perspective on Thursday night's encounter. Steve, it's the very first time on the podcast. Thank you very much for coming on. Tell me first of all, Steve, your first Rovers encounter and how you've enjoyed the club for so long.
It is a long time, mate. It was 1961, Good Friday. I was 8 years old. Well, if you just count back now, that makes me nearly 70. In fact, I'm 70 on Monday. But I was 8 years old and I went to the old Craven Park. It was Good Friday. And in those days, we talk about Easter fixtures. In those days, Rovers, that weekend, Rovers played York, the match I went to, on the Friday. They played Hunslet on the Saturday, and then they played Castleford on the Monday. So that was a tight schedule. And luckily, I went to the one where they pummeled York a little bit, and they beat York quite easily. And Graham Paul, the winger, Rovers winger, who I'm led to believe is still alive. I was talking to a great nephew of his over the World Cup. Cornishman Graham Paul, he scored 5 tries. So it was a good start to my following Rovers career.
Yeah. There's not many people whose first game includes that much, but obviously it's got your hook, Steve, and here you are now after all these years still supporting the Robins. And just before we came on air to do the podcast, he said this season is one maybe that he was most looking forward to for a very long time.
Yeah, I think I've got a bit of confidence. We always at the beginning of the season have high hopes, don't we, about our clubs, no matter which club you support. But look, I think we've got a bit of strength there. We'll no doubt talk about the strength as we go on because there's been a few injuries following the Wigan match. But that performance against Wigan just strengthened my view that we've got a decent team this year. And that, people were saying, well, you've got St Helens and Wigan at the top, and you've got Leigh and Wakefield at the bottom. And all the clubs in between could finish in any of the positions. Well, I'd like to think we could finish in the top 6.
Yeah, and I think it's definitely an ambition that all supporters should have, really. With the investment in the squad that we have. I know you've already mentioned about our squad depth and how it's already been tested. We'll come on to that later on in this episode when we talk about Salford on Thursday night. But obviously, Steve, no club really has a bad pre-season, do they? The coaches all come out, say the right things, the players have done. But I genuinely believe that this has been a really good pre-season for the Robins. And we saw on Saturday when we played Wigan, another fast start. And Willie Peters talks about how important it was to get fast starts, but to underpin that by being probably the fittest that the side's ever been. And I think it's things like that give me great confidence because we saw the evidence of that on Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, I mean, just look at Minicello when he came out. He looked such a lean machine compared to last year. They all looked fit. And yeah, they made that fast start in the game itself, scored the early try. But, we all know that rugby league's a momentum game. So if Wigan then gained the momentum. Now, they got those 3 tries. In the past, we'd have folded, I think. We'd have had a team that wouldn't have been able to cope with Wigan scoring 3 quick tries like that, and would have gone like a deck of cards. But this team didn't. Okay, they missed the goal kicks, but had they kicked the goals, would have still won by 3 points. You know, so Rovers stuck it out and scored again before half time, and then the drop goal. That was the icing on the cake. That was the one thing in among my mates, I was screaming for. Get that drop goal, get in front at half time, and the rest history. Because to be honest, our pack just overwhelmed the Wigan 6 in the second half, and it enabled the backs to, Sean Kenny-Dowell and, to score the tries.
Yeah, some really smart play, and good to see some of the regulars joining us again on YouTube. Mark Brady, Michael Martin, and Leonard Gregory joining us down under. He's tuning in on YouTube. So good day, mate.
Can I just interrupt?
Yeah, go for it, Steve.
Johno, Leonard and I met for the first time at the World Cup at the Tonga Samoa match. We've been, Twitter friends for a long time on Facebook. It was great to meet Leonard. So if you're out there, Leonard, good on you, mate.
Fantastic. And I think I also met Leonard as well. It was at the Wales Papua New Guinea game over in Doncaster. It was a wet, windy night. But yeah, everyone was in good spirits, and it's great to catch up with people because the net casts far and wide, doesn't it, with Hull Kingston Rovers, and Leonard's story is pretty unique, really, how he's come to support the red and white. So it's great to see him watching the YouTube on YouTube live. If we go back to the Wigan game, then Steve, Rovers lined up like this. We had Lachlan Coote at fullback, Ethan Ryan on the right wing, Tom Opachik making his competitive debut for the side, Sean Kenny-Dowell on the left centre with Ryan Hall out on the left wing. Jordan Abdul partnered Mikey Lewis in the halves. Jesse Sue was also making his competitive debut at prop. Matty Parcell lined up at hooker with Reece Kennedy also making his competitive debut at prop. James Batchelor came into the side and partnered Kane Lynette in the second row, and Elliot Minchella was the loose forward. On the bench, we had George King, Jez Litton, Matthew Staunton and Dean Hadley, and Frankie Holton was our 18th man. When you saw that lineup, Steve, was there any surprises, or was that pretty much how you expected us to go?
I think it's pretty much how I expected. And I was looking forward to the debutants, the Australians especially. At the back end of last season, I followed, once we knew we'd signed, I followed Kennedy and Opachik and Jesse. So the last two I've just mentioned there were the ones who impressed me the most. I felt that Reece Kennedy, he kept coming on as a sub, and I didn't think he was. I didn't think he. I'm being really picky here. I didn't think he made much ground in contact, but when I saw him on Saturday, boy, did he draw those defenders in and manage to offload well. He's going to be a real benefit. And how tall is he? 6'5". I'm 6'2", and I've been looking up to him. So, my opinion's changed on that performance. He took that bad knock, and let's hope he comes through it okay. But I think he could be a real asset. And the team was as I expected it to be. And they played very well. That my history is that I've been a journalist, a sports journalist, horse racing mainly, and obviously rugby league. And at times at rugby league matches, when people ask you to rate the players in a match, I would have rated, and I used an average of 7 as being good, 7 out of 10. That team on Saturday, I rated nobody below 7, and I rated 2 players definite 9s and 1 perhaps just below 9. And I think that was a good performance from what looked a good team as they ran out.
Yeah, and let's not forget as well, Steve, that Wigan are fancied by many to be competing at the back end of the season for a grand final spot. We saw St Helens, of course, record a real famous victory down under against Penrith. And there was many people predicting a an easy Wigan victory on Saturday. When you look at the lineup they put out, you know, people like Jay Field, Bevan French, you had King and Wardle making their debut, Smith and Cuss in the halves, Pierce Paul, Farrell. You know, there's much to fear there. But I suppose what gave me a little bit of hope was their middle doesn't seem to be as powerful, doesn't seem to be packing a punch that some of the other sides do in the Super League. And when you look at who we lined up against them, you know, starting with Jesse Sue, Reece Kennedy, with George King and Matty Staunton's come off the bench, that gave me the hope that if we built a platform in the middle and we more than competed with them, that we'd have enough on the outside edges to then maybe go over the top of them. And we did that on numerous occasions. And for me, I think their second row, Pierce Paul, was maybe the standout forward for them. He got through a lot of work, but our forward pack just seems to have a bit more grunt over Wigan.
Indeed. I've got a very good friend in the racing world who's a big Wigan fan, and for the last couple of years he's been telling me how weak they've been at centre. And I said to him before, I'm going, you've got the stronger centres that you want. You know, they never showed, did they, properly? King. No. George King's brother, you know, he never really showed, and Wardle, yeah, I think they both got a try, but our lads went through them, didn't they?
Yeah, Steve, what do you think about George King coming off the bench? Because we saw last season, didn't we? He was almost last man standing. You know, he got through so many minutes, got through so much work because, you know, our injuries meant that he had to fill in and do a job for the team. We haven't become accustomed to him coming off the bench, really, have we? We've been used to him being our starting prop. But he seems to have been helped by the fact that he may be playing less minutes, but for them less minutes, he's going to have a far greater impact than he would be if he was playing for longer.
Yeah, what a punch he added, didn't he? He burst. It was scattering people. And when I say scattering, what he was doing, he was making the yards after contact. Maybe they weren't all falling to the ground, but they weren't stopping him, and he packed a real punch. And I'm really looking forward to seeing that throughout the rest of the season. And the other person to mention there is Jesse Sue. When he came on off the bench later on for his second stanza, he absolutely tore into the Wigan six, and they weren't stopping him that easily, you know. So we've got two there, you know. The other teams' forwards aren't going to be looking forward to me.
No, and if you rely on the Super League Match Centre to get your stats, you'll know full well that Jesse Sue seems to have been missed off the team list and his stats aren't listed on there. But I'm reliably informed that he did 109 metres on Saturday from just 10 carries. So that's an average gain of just over 10 metres, which for a prop is pretty remarkable, really. And I know Vaughan over at Warrington's been getting plenty of praise for his performance. But for me, Jesse Sue, like you said, that impact he had and that go forward and that aggression is something that we definitely missed last season. We didn't have really any forward who packed that punch. So it was great to see Jesse Sue also fronting up with tackling as well, 16 tackles, which is a decent return for him. So he's one player that I really hope manages to stay injury free, because I think we're going to be really relying on his ability to carry that ball forward.
He adds a bit of mongrel that we've been lacking in the forwards a little bit. You know, he seems well balanced in himself. You know, he knows. I think he goes forward. He doesn't stop, but he does it within the law, if you see what I mean. And the same with his tackling. And what I love is his enthusiasm for the club, for the fans. And he showed it on Saturday, his enthusiasm while he's in the middle of the melee, you know, when he's in the middle of the pitch doing his stuff. That's what we want, enthusiasm. And we want a bit of grunt, and he offers that.
Yeah, 100%. And it was a raucous Craven Park on Saturday. I think the attendance was just under 10,000. Craven Street was absolutely rocking. It was great to be there. It felt like a real event, and the Rovers have done that really well. The K's performing and introducing the players out onto the pitch. And I think, Steve, what was really important is that Rovers got the first score and we started the game fast. And we saw that with Ryan Hall already on the score sheet this season. Fantastic play from Lachlan Coote to offload the ball to Hall after Jordan Abdullah put the high ball in and Kenny Dowler had knocked it back. But how important was Lachlan Coote's first interaction in that, where he picked up the kick through from the Wigan player and almost went, well, we all thought he might go the full length of the pitch. Unfortunately, he didn't, but he made us some really important meters to get us up that field and really put us on the front foot so early on.
I just wish that had been Ethan Ryan, because I think he might have given Field a bit of a run for his money. Although Field, of course, can I just mention Field there?
Yeah, go for it.
Field's performance is a player that we kept him quiet. We didn't give him any real running chances, and he's not the best passer of the ball. He's not the best taker of the ball. And if the key moment for me in the game, at the end of the game, was when Batchelor took the ball from him and gave us that daylight at the end of the match, creating that try. And so, yeah, what Lachlan Coote did, we knew he wasn't going to go the length of the field. Blimey, he might not have gone the length of the field in his heyday with both French and Field on the pitch, but yeah, like you said, it made that break, and then came the kick, and then came the pat down and the try. It was brilliant, and he's there again, Hawley, isn't he?
And do you know what, Steve? What impressed me is that once Coote had made that break, and the boys had got a sniff of something might be happening here, it was all on. It was all go forward. And there's been probably some supporters have been maybe a bit worried that we might see a change in the style of play. We'd become accustomed to it under Tony Smith, and then Danny Maguire sort of a bit of free play and a bit of freedom to do what they want, when they want, etc. And I think Willie Peters has looked at that and said, yeah, I want a bit of that, but it's got to be within a structure. And there was evidence of that on Saturday. But you could see that when Coote had gone, and then boys got a sniff, Parcell taking us up the pitch. Jordan Abdullah, as soon as he got the ball in the hand, they was looking for the try. And I think that is going to be a real feature of Rovers this season, that they're really going to go for it when the chance is on.
Absolutely. It's like the jigsaw. Could this be the final piece of the jigsaw? We've seen different styles. The Tony Smith thing, the way he allowed Rovers to throw the ball about. Danny Maguire added a touch of calmness to it and structure to it, but I think he may have been under a bit of instruction from Willie Peters from down under. Willie's watching the game and he's making suggestions perhaps to Danny. Danny's carrying them out, and now Willie's over and he can stamp his authority on the team to do these things, to make sure defensively you're on the ball, but in attack, play what you see. That's the game, isn't it? It's play what you see, and let's not be too structured. An old mate of mine is Justin Morgan, and Justin was always, for my money, and he is a good mate of mine, far too structured, because it was that mode of play back in that day that a lot of Aussie coaches were over, and everything had to be structured. What we saw on Saturday was something completely different, yet the same as last year, if you see what I mean. That there was there was a lot of structure in defence, but there was play what you see in attack.
Definitely. As good as Rovers start was, Steve, 8 minutes, Lee Marshall scores Wigan's first try. 14 minutes in, Jay Field goes and scores again for Wigan. And then on 21 minutes, Piers Paul goes and scores again. That makes the score 12 points to 6. Luckily, Wigan miss all 3 conversions. That could have had a massive impact on the scoreline. And like you've said, Steve, and many Rovers supporters have said to me as well, Rovers of old may have buckled at that point, and that may have been game over even at that early stage. But Rovers found a bit of resilience. We found a bit of a dogged determination. But there's no doubt, is there, that if them conversions had gone over, psychologically, it could have had a huge blow, an impact on the Rovers side.
Yeah, if ifs and buts were pictures and puts, we'd all be Tiger Woods, wouldn't we? It didn't happen. They didn't score the goals. But yeah, I understand what you're saying, and it would be maybe if we're, I don't know, there was just a mentality, we're going to come back, and it was momentum with Wigan. They got that momentum. They got the 50-50 decisions at that point in the game. We got a lot of 50-50 decisions later on, by the way, so I'm not slagging the referee off too much. But they got the 50-50 decisions. You know, the ball that seemed to hit French on the head and go forward, and the Wigan player took it in an offside position. When you look at it on the video replay, I'm certain that ball touched French first, and the Wigan player was offside, but the referee didn't give it that way. Those kind of decisions, when they go against you, can knock you, and it gives the opposition momentum, and they took that momentum, they scored the points from it, but Rovers never folded. And yeah, he did miss the kicks, but we still won by 3 points.
Yeah, Stephen, come off the hour, come off the man. Captain Kenny Dowell to the rescue. He's done it many times for the red and white. 28 minutes, Captain Kenny Dowell goes over for a fantastic try. Everyone's thinking he's looking for the offload, and he just keeps going, and he gets over the try line. Crucially, that makes the score 12-all with a conversion scored. And then Jordan Abdul goes and puts the drop goal over right on the hooter to make the score 13-12 at half-time. And Rovers go into the changing rooms in the lead.
In a positive position. You know, it doesn't matter how good the opposition is. When you've got Kenny Dowell with Ryan Hall on his outside, and Kenny Dowell's hanging on in the way that he does, you're putting indecision into the opposition winger and centre, and that's exactly what Sean did on Saturday with that try. You know, he could have passed the ball to Ryan Hall and it could have been a try, but instead he hung on and they just backed off until it was too late. It's over, and yeah, great try and a great Kenny Dowell try, because he scores them like that. And then, of course, but the other crucial thing there, we talk about the Wigan Smith missing the goal kicks. What about those 2 goal kicks from Coates? The 2 wide out. There's a swirling wind at Craven Park. I was stood in the east stand. You couldn't feel the wind, so therefore it must have been against Lachlan Cook taking those kicks, but he pinged them perfectly. And then, of course, as we say, the dying seconds of the half, up pops Jordan Abdul with a field goal.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to know whether that Jordan Abdul drop goal does change Willie Peters' halftime talk, because when they came out after the halftime hooter, Rovers seemed to be, they seemed to be buoyed by that 1 point, and some people may sniff at a 1 point lead, but I think psychologically it had a big impact just because of when it was scored. Yeah,
massive. Get a penalty just before half-time and go 2 points up. But get something. We could have in the past we might have gone for a try under the post and been tackled short. But no, it was using your head, and that's what everyone around me was saying, come on, field goal. We knew there were only seconds left. And to go in that 1 point in front was psychologically massive, because one of the factors that I haven't realised is that Wigan haven't won away from home since last July. And to think that they must have thought, well, we scored 3 tries to 2. We're going at half-time level. We'll come out and we'll give them another. But to lose that 1 point, suddenly they're behind, and suddenly they're thinking back to July, when was the last, psychologically.
Yeah.
What do we do? And we're going to go on to the second half in a minute. But boy, did we dominate that second half. And I think
Yeah,
it's that
we really did.
that 1 point drop goal that gave us the impetus to do that.
Yeah, we really did, Steve. And Kane Lynette, you know, I thought it would be crucial who scored next in the second half. Thankfully for Rovers, it was us. Another one of the old heads, Kane Lynette, went over that left edge, proving so problematic for the Wigan defence. I mean, it shows you how important our left edge was, Steve, because between Wigan's right edge of French, King, Pierce, Paul and Cust, they made 80 tackles between them. Now, you know, imagine that's mostly because of our left edge attack. And it just shows you how much work they had to get through to counter what we were doing. And Kane Lynette goes over for the score. We missed the conversion, but then we go 2 points in front with Coote scoring a penalty. We've already mentioned Coote's kicking being such a prominent feature of the game, and it was great to see him back. He had a much easier kick for his penalty. And then on 56 minutes, Morgan Smithies gets yellow carded. That puts Wigan down to 12 men. Sean Kennedy-Dowell goes and scores again, which is always important, isn't it? When you've got the man advantage, Steve, it's so important that you get points on the board.
Absolutely. Can I just say that I'm not sure, and I'm going to play the devil's advocate. I'm not sure that was deserving of a yellow card, but I'm glad he got it. You know, but I don't think it was deserving of it.
I think, Steve, even, I don't know if you've seen the rerun of the game and Mikey Lewis gets interviewed after it. I think he's got a bit of a wry smile on his face when he's asked about it. The only thing I would say is that Morgan Smithies, when he goes into tackle, he turns his back. And for me, that's when you lose control. You're not in control of the challenge. And if he'd have put his arms around him and hugged him and put him down to the ground, he didn't. Yeah. He turned his back, and you give the referee a question, don't you? You know, and if you get your technique right, then I suppose you stay on the field.
Listen, I'm glad we got it. I'm glad he got the 10 minutes, and again, like you said, we got the try with the man down. How many times in the past have we seen players go off from the opposition and not being able to benefit from it? Not score that try. So that was a vital try again, and we were always heart in mouth, weren't we, when we were only 5 points ahead. But that penalty and that try, you know, I felt at that point we were so dominant that it was down for us to lose the game rather than for Wigan to win it.
Yeah, Stephen, we was looking good. We was looking confident. But like you said, it was heart in mouths moments. Jake Wardle scores 67 minutes. Wigan go, what about 40 metres, 50 metres, score a fantastic try. And from being in a very comfortable position, all of a sudden, you know, we're starting to fear the worst. There's plenty of the game left. We've only got a 5-point lead. But then again, the hat-trick man comes along, doesn't he? Sean Kennedy-Dowell. Scores with ease, really. I think even he said in the interview he's probably the easiest 3 tries he's ever scored in his career that he got on Saturday. But it was a crucial score on 74 minutes. The conversion was missed. But prior to that, Steve, you've already mentioned it earlier on, that one-on-one from Batchelor, how important was that? I think he got the Rovers moment of the match.
2 things from what you've just said. The first one, we're 5 points down and Rovers teams might have buckled again, but they didn't. It showed a lot of character to continue to dominate after that try. That try was a bit of a killer try in some respects, you know, but the character of the Rovers team shone through there. We're not going to let that get to us, and especially actually, what to take that ball from field and set up what was that final try and victory for Rovers to please the fans. Everybody just were in raptures after that because we knew we'd beaten. You know, last year we played this similar Wigan team. Now the team was at full strength last year. This year both teams were at full strength, and it was our full strength team that beat the Wigan full strength team, and that's what made it so pleasing. For me.
Yeah, and it was a victory, Steve, with a bit of adversity. We saw Ryan Hall go off early. We saw Reece Kennedy leave the pitch with concussion. We saw Coote not being able to fulfil kicking duties because of a hamstring injury. So, you know, it wasn't just we didn't just win the game through our play. It was also with a bit of back to the wall. Batchel obviously going to centre. Sean Kennedy-Dowell playing out on the left wing. Forwards having to back up after Kennedy went off injured. One thing though, Steve, that I wanted to mention was about Jez Litton. Now, prior to the game, all the talk from Willie Peters in certain quarters was about how a change in style would mean that Parcell and Litton probably wouldn't feature on the pitch on the same time. But there's no doubt that when Litton came onto the pitch, he definitely had an impact. And for me, Parcell was up there with one of the best players on the pitch as well. So when we had them both out there, Wigan just couldn't deal with that pace whatsoever.
Absolutely. And, you know, I think Litton would make a good... Litton's going to be a good player at half-back or at number 9. He's a great sparring player, but he's got that little bit of speed that perhaps Jordan Abdul doesn't have. Abdul's good for his kicking and everything, but Litton brings that little bit of extra pace into that kind of sparring, one of those sparring positions. And it was great to see him do it. Who was it that predicted he'd be an England player one day? Someone recently predicted he'd be an England player one day. And, you know,
it wasn't Tony Smith, was it? I think Tony
it might have been Tony Smith, but someone else away from Rovers. And you know, he's got that potential. Yeah, he's got that potential.
And Steve, Sean Kennedy-Dowell, he was the TV man of the match. I suppose it's hard to argue. Was it three tries? He was our second top meter maker. He made 8 tackle busts. He had an average gain of 7 meters. The man of steel points, Jordan Abdul got 3. Sean Kennedy-Dowell got 2, and James Batchelor got 1. If you listen to the pre-season podcast we did with Paul Cook, you'll know that he's on the panel for the Man of Steel award. So I'm not sure what game he got, but it'd be interesting to see what other people's thoughts was. I thought Lachlan Coote really was hard done by, Steve, not to get any points. He 3 try assists, obviously conversions. He was our top meter maker. He got 4 tackle busts. He had an average gain of 7 meters, and it was definitely one of Lachlan Coote's best games in the red and white of Hull Kingston Rovers. But them 3 players, I suppose, Abdul, SKD, Batchelor, you know, 3 fantastic players who all had great games on Saturday.
And let's not forget another man, Parcell.
Well, yeah.
You know, Johno, can you bear with me 1 second?
Yeah, of course I can. Well, that is fantastic timing, Steve, because we will wrap up the Wigan game there, because I know we've got Paul Parkin who's chomping at the bit to get on the podcast. Of course, Rovers travel to Salford on Thursday night for our round 2 fixture against the Salford Red Devils. Squad news has been announced early today, so we can bring you that. Rovers are suffering from 4 injuries, so there's a bit of movement in our squad. Salford, of course, coming entertaining Rovers on the back of a 20-10 victory over the Leigh Leopards. Paul, I'll bring you in at this stage, mate. Thank you for hanging on. I really appreciate you waiting. I know you've been waiting patiently. But Paul, while Steve's just getting sorted, 20 points to 10 victors over Leigh. I suppose it's a bit of a banana skin fixture, that, isn't it? You know, if you'd have lost it, maybe people wouldn't have been that surprised. We saw all the razzmatazz, the band before the game, etc., etc. But really, it turned out to be a pretty clinical performance from the Red Devils.
Yeah, evening, lads. Lovely to be here. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, look, it was a banana skin. I think many of us went there a little bit trepidatious. I think it was their big day. You know, I mean, they've just been promoted. They put so much into the promotion of the game. I mean, I've got to say, it's not my thing. It's all a bit, you know, I've gone for the match, but it was brilliant. The entertainment was fantastic. The atmosphere they created, you know, well done to Leigh for that, to be honest. It was a good night. But I think the game, realistically, looking at the 2 squads on paper, I think it went the way I thought it would. I think I don't want to sound, it's hard not to sound a little bit big-headed saying this, but I think we're in control right the way through the game. I don't think Leigh had a lot of the ball, but didn't look threatening. A bit of a usual Adrian Lamb coach team, the way Wigan were a few years ago. They didn't entertain. They were there was a lot of function, a lot of structure, but nothing too much off the cuff that scared us. And we controlled the game really well. I thought it was all round a really good performance. It could have been tricky, but we just kind of stuck out. I think the first half we just ground it down. We just played a bit of one-out stuff. I think Lee were probably expecting, as most people are these days, for us to just throw the ball about. But you've got to earn the right to be in the game. I think that was what Paul Rowley's probably told the lads, and we did. Our forwards battled hard, and then eventually, the benefits came. So it was a good win, a good way to start the year. It was, a bit nervy at times, especially when they scored first. I thought, here we go, we've seen this before. We'd never won at Lee at the Sports Village. It's been an absolute graveyard for us. But no, it was a great performance from the lads, really, and a good way to start the season.
Yeah, former Robin Ryan Brealey and Partington were in the team of the week. Of course, for the Robins, Sean Coney-Dowell, John Abdul and Batchelor, the Man of Steel points winners, were also named in the team of the week. But you can't deny the impact that Croft and Sneed have. I mean, Croft against Lee, 24 carries, Sneed, 20 carries. When you see how much ball they've got in the hand, you can just see how important they are to the side.
I think that the two of them have mixed so well in such, realistically a short time. I mean, Brodie took a while to get going last year in many ways. Just to settle in, I think he needed to find his love for the game a little bit. Mark Sneed, I mean, I don't need to tell you lads, you've seen enough of him over a long period, I'm sure, too much of him at times. He's a great organiser. When he was with us initially years back, I always thought there was something lacking from his game. I didn't know what it was. Kicking game was never in doubt. He's always been a great kicker, and obviously plays kicking. He's sensational. But when you watch him now, how he's matured into this playmaker and this control, he gets the players where he needs them. And he's a real sort of coach on the pitch for the rest of the team. It's great to have him there. And the two of them together have mixed really well. I mean, Brodie Croft's just got that bit of magic you need. If you're going to have a marquee player, that's what it's there for. There's no point just bringing in some plodder to do, the average work. He's just got a bit of class. And on Friday night, he wasn't in the game that much. But then those couple of moments, he set up a try for Callum Watkins and then one for Ryan Brealey. It's just magic like that you need. And that's the difference. But for me the other night, it was more about setting a platform from the forwards. And Ollie Partington was his, competitive debut for us. And he was brilliant. He was everywhere. He just, I thought he had great potential at Wigan. I'm a little bit surprised he let him go. I know his discipline can be a little bit of a worry, but no, the other night he was a real threat to him. Good hands on him for a big lad as well. So I think he started to lose forward for us. So it was more of a forwards win for me. But those two lads, they combine so well. And then you've got obviously Tim Laffey outside, who was again just a threat all night. Every time he gets the ball, he seems to make metre after metre, and he's got this offload. So all round, yeah, I think obviously those two are the conductors of what we do, but there's a few players there that really surprised me the other night.
Yeah, Steve, we'll come on to squad news very shortly. I mean, we can tell straight away that victory over Leeds probably just calmed a few nerves and settled down any fear that they had. But when you look at this game from a Rovers perspective, Steve,
before that, can I just make a point that
yeah, go for it, Steve.
Paul talked about Sneed's kicking, and we're talking about Abdul's kicking, and I think Sam Tompkins called Abdul the best kicker in the league in his commentary, and yet you've got Sneed, who for me is as good a kicker. It's going to be a real match, isn't it, between these two? What do you think, Paul?
I couldn't agree more. I made a few notes earlier on, and Jordan Abdul came up in most of them as just the key. But he has got a kicking game. He's not your conventional halfback. I'll say that about him. But yeah, his kicking game's sensational. But he's another one of those players that's he's got brains. He's a rugby player. He knows the game. And he's obviously going to be a massive threat. And the two of them, yeah, I'm sure they're both trying to get one over on each other. That'll be interesting to watch that, actually, to see if they follow each other around the pitch a little bit, try and get one over on each other.
Yeah, well, the timing to take those kicks, that's fantastic, isn't it? Yeah. It's a fast game, it's a speedy game, and yet you've got two players there who seem to have an extra 10 seconds with the ball because of the way they can target the ball from those kicks. It's fantastic. What a skill to have.
Yeah, so when we travel down the M62 on Thursday, we'll be doing it without Matty Staunton, Lachlan Coote, Ryan Hall or Reece Kennedy. Matty Staunton's got a foot injury. Coote, like we've already mentioned, has got a hamstring injury. Ryan Hall suffered a rib injury, and Reece Kennedy concussion, which means that there's going to be changes to our starting lineup. That's for sure on Thursday. When you look at that squad now, Steve, does it give you a little bit of fear, or do you think we've still got enough in the locker to go over to Salford and get a victory with who we've got left?
Still, I think I never preempt games that much where I say we're going to beat a side, but we had 2 victories over Salford last year. However, looking at the squad, as we touched on earlier, we've got the backup. We've got I'd play Will Dagger at full back, and Lewis Senior. When I watched him in the World Cup, I'm thinking, will he get into the first match? And now he's got his chance. I really rate him, so he's the man that's going to take over from Ryan Hall. And then the forwards, I'm wondering if Sam Luckley will be in the 17. I'm pretty sure he will be. Ex-Salford, of course. I don't know your impressions of him, Paul, when he was with you.
I was a big fan, a really big fan. I think he developed into a really reliable forward. When we got him from Newcastle, he was raw. You could say you could see that in his game. He had a lot to learn, but he's got a really good offload. That's one of his keys. He'll draw men in and he'll get the ball out. Off the pitch, a really nice character. Actually, a good lad to have about. But I was disappointed to see him go. I thought last season he was a key component in what we did. We had a great year, and players like him, he seemed to be learning every week and getting better. And I'm sure he'll be key to play against us and give us a reminder of what we've let go. But yeah, he's a good player, Sam Luckley, and he's got time on his side as well. So I think he'll obviously be settled down now. So yeah, he's a good player. I think that'll be an interesting player to have in your team. And I wish him all the best. He's one of those players that sometimes when a player leaves your club, you get a bit, you're very anti that person, but not him. I don't think you'll find too many Salford fans who won't be wishing Sam all the best, because he gave everything he had every single week, and he did it with a smile on his face. I won't forget that try he scored at St James's last year, where he ran off like Alan Shearer. Brilliant to see, great character, but yeah, good player. I hope he does get a good run out and makes a career of it now.
Yeah, he's also watching him in the World Cup. He was in a team that were badly beaten each time, but he had that little bit of what I said about Jesse Sue, a little bit of mongrel in him. He's not frightened to take somebody on and give it back if he receives it. He doesn't back away.
Very, very much. He's up and at him, and he's always key. Cause for us, he started most of the games off the bench, and you could see him in his warm up, the vigor in everything he did. He was so keyed up to just get on there and give it a go. And I'm sure he's a pain in the backside for a coach, because I think he'd be rabbiting on all the time. Get me on. He's that kind of lad. So he'll be a real asset to Rovers. He's a good lad, and I just hope, like I say, I hope his career continues to go up, because he deserves it for all the effort he did. And he took a gamble. I know he was at Newcastle, but he had his job as well, because he was part-time, and he decided to go full-time, and a lot of that can go badly wrong for a player. If he doesn't make the level at Super League, you've got to go back with a tail between your legs, and it didn't, and he's made it work. And no, he'll do well. He'll do well for you.
I'm glad
Steve?
that Willie Peters took him on. You know, bit of a surprise to me, but he must have known something about him to take him on, and I'm pretty sure he'll feature somewhere in the game.
Well, Steve, he's one of only 3 recognised props in our 21-man squad for Thursday, so I think he's probably guaranteed to play. What's interesting, though, is how Willie Peters will counter that. Normally, 2 props on the bench, how he'll counter that. Although we do still have a dearth of talent in the second row, don't we? It's going to be interesting to see how Willie Peters counters the loss of Kennedy and Staunton on Thursday.
I just wonder whether Louis Johnson might come into the thoughts. But Frankie Holton deserves to be in because he's done nothing wrong at the club ever, and we defensively he's as good as anybody. So maybe he might be in the thoughts as well. But the fact that we're talking about players of this calibre who are good players. Despite us having injuries, we've got players of this calibre to come back in. I don't know. Salford, some people are saying the 17 are good. Beyond that, what have you got there, Paul?
I'd actually, for once, I think this is the strongest squad we've had in probably 40 years, if I'm honest with you. Right. It is better than it might look. There's a lot of players there who are a little bit underrated, I think. I know it's hard when you watch other clubs and you watch your own club, but we have got some good. The problem we've got at the moment is that I think there's 7 or 8 players missing with injuries already, who would be maybe not starters, but certainly good enough, regular first teamers. The likes of Dan Sargentson, who would be somewhere around there. I mean, Ryan Lannon's someone you guys will know, who played most of the last season, people like that. But no, I think it's interesting you mentioned the props, actually. I don't think it's going to be that kind of game. We don't have, and haven't had for a while, a big pack as such. We've got a very mobile pack. And I think that might help in Rovers' favour as well. If you've not got that many prop forwards knocking about, I think, because I actually think it'd be quite an open game. I think there'll be a lot of speed, a lot of movement involved. It won't be. I don't think you'll see too much one-out rugby from either team. So I don't see that being an issue for you in that way. But I mean, I look at our squad and we look pretty strong. I don't think there's too many from that 17 or the 21 that's listed for the game that you wouldn't think were our main starters. We look pretty strong this week. I don't think we picked up any injuries from Friday night, and I noticed Joe Burgess was back in the squad for the week.
That's a key. That is a key.
But then Rhys Williams last week was magnificent in his place. So I'd feel a bit harsh dropping Rhys if that was the case. I mean, it's a great problem to have. If you Paul Rowley, that's exactly what you want. You want players who are in form who you've got to drop. So it depends how fit Burgess is. We don't know. We don't really know what the injury was anyway. But overall, I think we look quite strong, quite solid. And I think that's a good thing for us, just keeping that momentum now. Last season, we had spells where we had something like 17 players missing with injury. I mean, no team's going to manage that. So we can stay clear of that and keep the nucleus of our team together. I think we've got a decent squad. I really do. I'm not making any bold predictions, but certainly as last year proved on our day, we can compete with anyone. But this is one of those games. I mean, you mentioned before, Steve, about you beat us twice last year. There was only 2 teams in the Super League I think we didn't beat. One was Wigan and one was yourselves. That's massively unusual.
We've got a record against each other where it's pretty steady, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, we all know about the game in the past, but
yeah.
I always enjoy going to Salford. I used to enjoy going to Salford back in the 70s when you were at the Willows, when you had that nightclub. What a night out that was, Friday night. Salford were the first team to ever play Friday night football because they had that nightclub. And so you could go watch the match, watch the greats, Watkins and company, and then go and enjoy the rest of the night, whichever way you wanted to. So I've always had an affinity with Salford. No, old mate, man, Pete Walker, he played for Salford as well at Hockey.
Peter Walker, yeah.
So yeah, it's always been and I'm pleased that you revived the club over the years in the way that we have. We had our troubles in the club's revived. So yeah,
it's kind of funny that I mean you say that, and I've again, it's something I've been thinking about the last couple of days about the two teams and so on, and I think that game that we're not going to go into, in many ways, for us it would have been that would have been the end. I think that one day, but for you guys, I think it was. I know it won't feel like that at the time, but I think it's one of the best things that could have happened, because Hull Kingston Rovers now have come back as in my eyes, as a club that, I mean, the entertaining rugby you played over the last few years has been brilliant, but the actual everything about, what's happening at the ground, I think the whole thing has changed. I think somebody's gone back to sort of root and branch and gone, this is where we need to be from that point. So as much as it was an awful day, it could have been the starting point of the future. And it's, obviously, like I say, everything that's gone on at the ground since, and the team and everything that's going on, I think it's been a massive plus. And I think going back to last year's games, I think they were possibly two of our worst performances. And I'm not taking anything away, but I know when we came up to your place, we were coming off the back of, I think we'd lost at Saints by 4, we'd lost at Wigan by 6, and we were feeling good. And we turned up, and you absolutely pasted us. But one of the standout stats from that day, and I've mentioned it on our podcast quite a few times, is that of all our forwards, the one who made the most meters made less than 40 meters that day. We didn't go anywhere. We couldn't break a break. We were absolutely awful. I remember coming away from there and thinking, that's our playoff hopes gone. That was it. Because at that time, there was still, I think yourselves were in there, Cass. There were so many teams who were still within that thing. And I thought, that's it. And it was only 2 weeks after that, we went on a run that none of us saw coming following that game. So, I think, like you say, we seem to have seasons where we'll beat you, and the year after won't get anywhere near you. So it's going to be interesting this year. And I think the two teams, it's a shame that you've got so many players missing this week. So, and key players at that, because I think it would have been I think it's a very even thing. But both squads look on paper very competitive to each other, and the challenge for that top 6, I think we'd be two of the teams that will be up there fighting it out this year.
Sorry, Paul, forgive me. I mentioned earlier that you've got Saints and Wigan at the top. You've got Liam Wakefield at the bottom. Bookmaker-wise, that's how it's going to be.
Yeah.
But those 8 places in between, who's going to back against you being in the, top 4? Who's going to back against us being in the top 4 now? What was disgraceful was the fact that William Hill, the bookmaker, had us at 5-2 to be relegated before the Wigan match. I don't think you'll get much of that 5-2 now.
I don't think so. I find that unusual. I think I think, like you say, I think it could be anyone. I mean, I'm looking at obviously ourselves, Rovers, FC, Cass, all them teams, and then you've got Warrington, who are bound to be strong. I mean, I saw them the other night, and they look magnificent. As poor as Leeds were, that Warrington were fantastic. I hate saying that. So the teams that weren't so good last year are going to be better this year. It's going to be a lot tighter. And I think it just goes down to a couple of things, luck and injuries, that kind of thing. It's going to be the difference. And games like Thursday night are key. Taking points off each other are going to be key. Like you say, you're going to have Wigan and Saints at the top. there's no point putting everything in and trying to take 2 points off them. These are the games that count for this year. If we're going to make it, if either of us are going to make an impact.
Those 2 points we took off Wigan are very helpful to us, by the way.
Well, there is that. Yeah.
Well, if we bring it back to Thursday night's game again, and we've only got a few minutes left of the podcast before we've finished recording, so huge thanks for everyone who's tuned in so far. Steve, of course, we already mentioned the injuries. That's probably buoyed Salford in fact of who's missing, but no doubt Salford will be concentrating on their own game regardless of who they're facing. My lineup, Steve, for the game on Thursday is Will Dagger at fullback, with Ethan Ryan opposite continuing on the right-hand side. On the left, I'd continue with SKD in the centre, with Senior coming in to replace Ryan Hall. Stick with Lewis and Abdul in the halves, with a starting prop of Jesse Sue and George King. Matty Parcell at hooker. I'd go with Batchelor and Lynette in the second row, with Elliot Minchella loose forward. Then on the bench, I'd go with Dean Hadley, Jez Litton, Sam Luckley and Frankie Holton, with Sam Wood the 18th man. Is there anything in there, Steve, what you disagree with?
No, not at all. Not at all. Perhaps I'd bring Luckley on as a starting prop. And bring, we brought George King on later against Wigan. But yeah, that's pretty much what I'd go with.
Paul, against Salford, Lee started with Brealey, CO, Cross, Lafay, Williams, Croft, Sneed, Dupree, Akers, Vuniaya, Watkins, Stone and Partington, with Gerrard, Ormond, Royd, Atkin and Wright on the bench. I know if Burgess, fresh from signing a new 3-year deal, comes into the squad. Can you expect to see any movement in there, or is it going to be same again, do you think?
I think it'll be the same. The Burgess Williams thing will be interesting. If Burgess is fit, undoubtedly, I think you play him. I think you have to. He is. As much as I like Reece Williams, Burgess is the main one. The only other player that might come in is Ellis Longstaff. He looked. I know he was at FC last year, wasn't he? He looked excellent in the pre-season games. We didn't get much time with him. We only had 2 friendlies, and one of them we played the academy basically. So it's a bit of a strange situation. But he looked really good. So whether he's going to come in onto the bench. But again, a bit like yourselves, really, we seem really strong in the back row. We seem to have about 7 or 8 options in that area, so that could change. But I don't think you do. I think you keep the same team. But maybe Williams drops out. But that it would be harsh. But it's a great position for us to be in, to have all these players fit and ready to go. And I don't see too many changes. I don't. Paul Rowley's not really that kind of coach, and as I've said, with the injuries that we've already got, he's going to have to use what he's got anyway. So I'd stick with last week's team. It looked good. It looked controlled, and I think if we're going to build a bit of momentum, you've got to keep your players together. You don't change a winning team generally. So I think there might be one change, and that'd be it.
And Paul, if you look at that side. Go on, Steve. Go on.
Paul, who do you play after you play us?
Warrington away.
Right. So, do you want to bring Burgess back against us, or do you want to bring Burgess back against Warrington?
That's strangely enough, he didn't play last year at Warrington, and Williams came in and an absolute blinder. It's a good question. That, do you? I mean, if you can give him an extra week, if he needs it, definitely do it. Obviously, this is a shorter turnaround this week than it will be for next week. Although we do play Thursday again next week. I think we're the new Leeds. We're on Sky every week. But that's a good point. I mean, Paul Rowley's the only man who knows, what the fitness levels are like. But for me, I mean, he's a real sort of Rolls Royce winger, Burgess. I know he had a on and off time at Wigan a little bit on the second spell, but he's a real threat. And him and Tim Lafay have this partnership that can be quite devastating at times. So I'd like to see him back, but I could easily see him getting another week off with Reece Williams being in form anyway.
Steve, very quickly, I'm going to come to you for a score prediction.
It's a tough one. Head and heart, isn't it, really? I think we can sneak it. There'll be a try and a goal in it. Way. Like you said earlier, Paul, I agree with you. I think there'll be a lot of points. I think there'll be a lot of points, and I think it'll end up, something like, I don't know, 26-24 or something like that, perhaps. Hopefully in Rovers' favour for me, because then we've got Lee next, and wouldn't it be great if we went 3 games because I think we'd beat Lee. Wouldn't it be great if we went 3? But you're feeling the same, but you'll play Warrington as your next match. Paul.
Yeah, we have a fairly decent record at Warrington, strangely enough. But that's for the future. I mean, they're in great. They looked brilliant the other night, didn't they? They looked just. They look like the Warrington you expect to see every week, but you never do.
I've got a good friend. We were discussing your performance and the Warrington Leeds match. The Warrington Leeds match, and he said he was more impressed by you beating Lee than he was by Warrington beating Leeds, because he felt that Leeds were possibly one of the worst Leeds teams he's ever seen, and Warrington were allowed to do what they wanted against them, whereas you had to graft against Lee. And so he was more impressed with your victory. So it'd be interesting to see when you do play Warrington how that goes. Yeah,
but that's something for the future. And we always, Warrington's a bit of a rivalry for us these days. So that'll be interesting anyway. But it means nothing if we lose on Thursday at home, lose your first home game, and any momentum you're trying to build goes out the window. You don't want to be going to Halliwell Jones without any confidence. So this is a very key game for us, I think, for the season.
Go on then, Paul. Put score prediction.
Well, funnily enough, just before I did this, I did our podcast while we recorded it. It was pre-recorded, so I've got to stick with the same score I went with on that, and I'm just trying to find out what I put. I've gone 26-16. I think there'll be tries scored. I think a couple of penalties might be, just take the edge a little bit. And I actually think if you didn't have the injuries, I'd be a little bit. I'd be worried. I'll say that. I think the injuries are going to take away, especially Q, just because of his kicking as well. Could be an issue. But yeah, I think we'll just edge it being at home. But it's one of them that could go either way. Like I said before, this is one of the key games through the season. 2 evenly matched sides. It's just a shame you're not tipping up on with a full squad. And just to add, by the way, can I just mention that this is the worst night on Thursday we could have possibly played this game. I know
what you're going to say, Paul. I know what you're going to say next.
They've managed to put us on at the same time as Manchester United played Barcelona 2 miles down the road on the telly at the same time. I mean, talk about picking your fixtures. We're not competing with that. It's going to be an absolute nightmare. You guys having to travel over on a Thursday. I mean, that's not good for anybody either. If you've got work, I dare say some people have to take a half day and that kind of thing. So I can't. Of all the days, if it had been the Friday or the Sunday, I think it'd have been. I think the atmosphere would be unbelievable. I mean, you guys obviously always bring it. But yeah, it's just a shame that they've picked a Thursday night when people aren't going to turn up. It's a sad situation. We struggle at the best of times, and after our following at Lee, this is going to be disappointing.
Yeah, it's going to make Phil Clark look a bit silly as well, isn't it? Because Phil Clark says you've got the noisiest fans in the league.
He doesn't need any help with that. We punch above our weight, but there's just not enough of us. That's the problem. But so it's a poor night for it, but I'm sure the teams will make up for it, and hopefully they can create a bit of spark for the atmosphere.
Yeah, and Paul, like Paul just said, Manchester United are taking on Barcelona on Thursday. So if you are travelling over, I'd probably give yourself an extra hour on top of going, and never mind coming out, because it's not the easiest place to get out of as well. So it's going to be plenty of traffic around there, especially if you're parking over the Trafford Centre way. It's going to be a busy night, but good luck to all the Robins who are travelling over to cheer on Hull Kingston Rovers. It's promising to be a really exciting encounter, isn't it? Rovers went to the game with 4 injuries, but on the back of a fantastic victory over Wigan. Salford probably looking to be an unchanged side, which is pretty rare in Super League. Adding the fact that Joe Burgess might come into the side. 20 points to 10 victory over Lee. It is definitely a game worth watching, and it's one that I'm certainly looking forward to taking in. That brings us to the end of another really entertaining Red Robin Podcast Weekly, the first one of Rovers 2023 Super League campaign. Please remember to subscribe to the podcast YouTube channel if you have not done so already. And a massive thank you, of course, to you, Steve, and to you, Paul, for joining me for episode 1. And remember, please go and check out podcast sponsors Budget Tyres, Autocentre, and 360 Accountants. But for now, live, love, laugh, and be happy.